Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here again with another installment of my complete analysis of all 389 Bach chorale harmonizations. Today we're going to be looking at Jesu, meine, Seele, which translates to Jesus, it is by you that my soul, and then it continues to say, through your bitter death, from the devil's dark hell, and the heavy pain of sin, have been mightily snatched away. I feel like the title is an incomplete fragment, so it's sort of like how I sang Gregorian chant for a long time at my university, and they when you talk about chant, the titles of the chant, it's just like the first part of the phrase. Like Dies Irae, for example, right? That's not a complete phrase. That's just like the beginning of the chant. It's like the intripit, I believe is what it's called. But that being said, this chorale, very, very beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful chorales that we've listened to up to this point. Bach was really fond of the melody and harmonized it a number of times. This particular harmonization is from BWV 354, but it was used in a number of other cantatas. I think 5 of them, it looks like, from my notes. That being said, we start off in the key of A minor, and we start off with a 1 chord. It's pretty conventional to start with a 1 chord or a 5 chord, but most of the time we see a tonic triad at the beginning. We have some passing tones in the inner voices. Again with another tonic triad, A, C, and E. And then we get G sharp, E, B, and B. That would be an E major triad, so 5, but in first inversion because the G sharp's in the bass. And then we get a really interesting harmony. We have F sharp, A, and C. It's interesting. I don't know exactly how to analyze this harmony because there are a lot of possibilities here. F sharp, E, A, and C. That would imply a 6 diminished chord, which is cool because that's just a tonic triad in melodic minor when you spell it on the submediant, right? 6 turns into diminished rather than major because the tonic gets raised by a half step. But we have E natural, G, and C. That could also be, if we consider these strong or accented non-chord tones, this could be like 3 augmented in first inversion. Really, I don't know what's going on here. It's mostly just counterpoint, but this F sharp idea going on definitely confuses things a little bit in terms of what analysis is appropriate for this, but I'm leaning on the side of 6 right now. I thought originally in my first analysis it was just a root position 5 chord, but this C and the soprano is what makes it very interesting. But yeah, we'll just keep going. F sharp, D, A, and D. That is a D major triad, which is again a result of the melodic minor scale, right? D is usually minor in the key, in minor key, in A minor, but when you raise the 6th scale degree, in the case of A minor being melodic minor, in this case it turns into a major triad. And then we have G sharp, D, D, and B. That's kind of like a, even though these are all sort of like non-chord tones, actually this D, or that B is a non-chord tone, so is this B. We could kind of call that a passing 7th, as we would expect. And then we have A, C, A, and C, a root position 1 chord where the third is doubled and the root is doubled, which is interesting. Passing tone in the tenor and anticipation in the soprano, interesting. Then we have E, A, and B. We know by now that this A is a suspension, right? Because it's 4/3 over the bass. So that's just a 5 chord in root position. And then we cadence on 1 with the tonic in the soprano. That is a perfect authentic cadence. So yeah, this chord right here is definitely the kind of the highlight of the whole phrase. Actually, this is the 4/3 suspension right at the cadence is very beautiful too, but this interesting crunchy chord right here makes this progression very interesting. It's like a deceptive cadence, but diminished triads don't really have a tonic feel, so One of the byproducts of melodic minor is that a triadic kind of intrigue going on. But that being said, A, C, E, and C, another root position triad, no need to reanalyze. Passing tones in the lower voices, we have F, A, and C. That is a root position 6 chord, this time F natural, it's major rather than diminished. Passing tones in the alto and the bass, we have D, A, F, and B. That is a B half diminished chord in first inversion, so 2 diminished 6, 5. And then we have E, G sharp, E, and B. This is a passing 5 chord. Put that in parentheses. And then we have F, A, D, and A. That is a D minor triad. So lowercase 4. Almost wrote uppercase because of the last time we saw 4. And it's in first inversion. Then we have B, B, D, and G sharp. 4 often goes to 7, which in this case it is, but this time it's in first inversion. And then we have counterpoint and anticipation for the cadence, which is a half cadence, right? Because we're cadencing on 5, E major, E, E, G sharp, and B. So what's going on here? C, C, E, and A. That's A minor in first inversion. And then we also get counterpoint going on here, this F sharp and this D sharp as well. But it's kind of turning into 5-3 on the and. But we have other voices that are making the texture richer in terms of counterpoint and dissonance, because every voice pretty much has their own rhythm at this point. Okay, so let's move on to the next phrase. If we go ahead, I just wrote H here, it should be HC, right, for half cadence. If we look ahead to the next cadence, we have a perfect authentic cadence in the key of G major, so we're looking for a point in which we can modulate. So we start with an E major triad, same chord, spelled the exact same, and then that goes to A minor, A, E, A, and C. And I think because F sharp gets introduced with G natural, like on the and after, I think we've started the modulation process here. So we're going to call that 2 now in the key of G major, as A minor is the supertonic in the key of G major. And then we have F sharp, D, A, and D. That's a D major triad, which is the dominant in the key of G major, so that's 5-6. A passing 7th going on here. The chord gets turned into sort of like a 7-5-3 on this beat because of the D leaping or the D skipping down. We then have G, D, G, and B. That's a root position G major triad, a 1 chord, and then we have a passing 7th in the bass. E, C, G, and C. That is a C major triad, so a 4 chord in first inversion. We have some passing tones going on, or a neighbor tone here rather, and that would turn the chord into a kind of like a 5-4-2, but with a 9 in the bass, so I don't think that's really analyzable as a meaningful harmony. Then we have D, G, D, and B. That is D, G, D, E, G, and B. Apologies, I'm still getting used to the tenor clef. So that probably means this D is an accented non-chord tone. C, E, G, and B. B is also an accented non-chord tone, so I think this is C, E, G, and A. So that would be an A minor 7 over C, so 2-6-5 in the key of G major. And then we have D, D, F sharp, and A, passing 7th in the tenor. That is a 5 chord, and then we cadence on 1. That makes a lot more sense. A 2-6-5-1 or 2-6-5, in this case 5-1. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, moving on to the next phrase. So if we look ahead to the cadence we have a perfect authentic cadence, but this time in the key of C. So we need to look for some sort of modulation point between the next two, between this cadence and this cadence, and I think it happens pretty early on. So we have A, E, C, and C. The tenor crosses the alto here. That's interesting. So that'd be an A minor triad in root position, and I think actually this is where we're modulating. Go ahead and just call this 6 in the key of C major. Then we have G, B, G, and D. Lots of movement in the inner voices. That is just a root position G major triad. That's a 5 chord. Passing 7th in the bass. E, C, G, and E. That is a C major triad, so 1 in first inversion because it's over E, so 1, 6. Passing tones in the soprano and the tenor. Then we have F, A, and C. That is an F major triad, so a 4 chord. Passing tone in the bass, neighbor tone in the alto. D, D, A, and F. That is a D minor triad in root position, so a 2 chord. Passing tone in the alto. Then we have E, G, C, and E. That is a C major triad in first inversion. So that'd be a 1, 6 chord. Yes, a 1, 6 chord. E, G, C, and E. What does that G do? G, D, D, and F. Or this is a B. B, D, D, and F. Kind of turns it into a 7 a little bit, that B. That turns it into like a 7, 6 almost. But we'll just leave it 2 there for now. We have a passing tone in the bass. G, G, D, B, and D. That is a 5 chord. Passing 7th in the tenor. And then we 1. That's a perfect authentic cadence if I've ever seen one. And then we have a half cadence moving on in the key of A minor, right? Because we're cadencing on E major again. But in this case, we only get G sharp here. Like if we look at the melody, it really is sort of highlighting C major really up until the very end. So this is kind of one of those examples of Bach modulating on very short notice, which is kind of interesting. It gives this cadence a very modal sound, like where he does a half cadence in the parallel minor very quickly from the major key. So we're going to analyze this in the key of C pretty much up until the very end, I think. G, D, G, and B. That is a G major triad in root position. A, C, F, and C. Depending on how you look at this, this could be a 4, 6 chord, or it could be a 6 chord in root position. I think it's 4, 6 with a passing tone in the bass. This progression I see a lot more, 5 to 4, 6, rather than 5 to 6. Actually, I can't really say that with complete accuracy. I feel like 5 in root position to 4, 6 is more common than 5 in root position to 6, but I'd have to go back through my notes to verify that. And I haven't been keeping like statistical data. I wanted to, but it's just too time consuming. B, G, D, and D. That is a 5 chord again, but this time it is in first inversion. Passing 7th in the tenor. C, E, G, and E. That is a 1 chord root position, which is why it's kind of strange that we're getting a half cadence in A minor. But I think right here is where we get the modulation. A, F, B, and D. That would be a 7 half diminished in third inversion, so a 7, 4, 2 in the key of C. But in the key of A minor, that is 2, 4, 2, which is a predominant chord rather than a dominant chord. Neighboring leading tone in the bass. Then we get A, E, A, and C, a root position 1 chord, as 2, 4, 2, and 1 share a bass. And then we cadence on 5, so 1 to 5 being our half cadence. And at the end, we have a perfect authentic cadence on A major, that Picardy third being there in the alto. It's a very common place for Bach to put it. We have C, E, A, and C. It goes to a 1 chord in first inversion. Very active alto and bass line going on here, very interesting. A, D, F, and B. That again is another one of these two half diminished 4/2 chords with G sharp, D, E, and B. I think that's meaningful enough to analyze because we have a 1 chord A, C, E, and C on the next beat, 2 going to 1. It can happen, right? Like G sharp, F. Yeah, it could happen here, but this E and this G sharp both spell a 5 chord, or 5-6-5 to be more specific, because it's E7 over G sharp, and 2-5-1 is a very common progression. So I think that's meaningful enough to analyze. And then we have D, D, F, and B. All the chords, all of the voices change here, and I feel like it's because it's anticipation. It's in anticipation for the cadence, so there's like a rallentando happening here. So the harmonic rhythm too slows down. So D, D, F, and B. That is a 2 chord in first inversion. Put it in parentheses to differentiate it from the strong beat or the numerical beats. I need to find a word for that. The ands are the ones that I analyze in parentheses because they correspond with, if I ever do analyze a chord that utilizes parentheses, I put the chord analysis in parentheses as well. It's just a visual aid for me. E, G sharp, E, and D. That is a 5 chord. And then F, A, D, and F, or D. I don't think that really contributes to anything, so we'll just go ahead and mark those as non-chord tones. E, A, E, and C. An A minor triad in second inversion, and this is being used as a cadential 6/4, E, G sharp, E, and B, right? 1, 6, 4, and 5 are often bound together because they share a bass, and they're used in cadential situations before we fully cadence in a perfect authentic cadence. And this time it's major. We see Bach end with a lot of Picardy thirds. I feel like that's more often than not, actually, or maybe my experience so far has been influenced by the chorales that I've been looking at, the order that they were presented. But that being said, this chorale, very, very beautiful. I love the way that it sounds. The melody's very great. The harmony isn't too experimental, and he doesn't really force too many, outlandish modulations on it. It pretty much stays in and around the key. And I think he was very strategic about where he placed the modulations, like where the melody could be an excerpt from another key. We see him experiment with that, as opposed to trying to experiment with a part of the melody that's clearly in another key, as we've seen in other chorales. That being said, very beautiful chorale. I really enjoyed this analysis, and I'm also looking forward to tomorrow's analysis. Thank you so much for watching the channel. Thank you for supporting me, and I hope you take care.